you talk about the levels of RAG, like thinking about it, and then the evals step along the way. I'm thinking about it for different things. Evals for different things, like classification, summarization, translation.
Okay.
So it's
I really want to actually hear about your summarization work, because I'm doing a lot of stuff with translation, so with summarization for people like Rewind and Nero. So let's just post. We are live.
what are their concerns about summarization?
We care about like whether or not these things are accurate and whether or not they're helpful. Right? Like if you want to
What is
extract action
accurate?
items, we just don't want any kind of like hallucinations, in the sense that one, maybe the wrong speaker is assigned to an action item, or two, like it's just not relevant, right?
Sweet.
Like for example, like in the beginning of a call, we'll do a little bit of like, how's the week? Da, 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 da. We don't want that stuff to show up, and we have evaluation prompts that do that, but we don't have any like, yeah, we just like, okay, like there's going to be chit chat, ignore it, and then at the end we just ask another prompt that says like, was there chit chat, are the action items actionable, were the summaries correct, and we're trying to do some more citation stuff. But
I think accuracy is a little bit more straightforward. Relevance is a little bit harder. Yeah. So, but yeah, we can chat about that if you want to.
Yeah, do you want to do that first, actually? Because I would love to get like a 10-minute cover of like what you think about in terms of what summarization means, and how do you think about accuracy.
Sure. Oh man, did I have this presentation thing set up already? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah. Let me know when you can put it on.
Okay, now I can put it on. So I think about summarization. It's really getting a concise summary from key ideas in the document, and I think it's very similar how you think about it in terms of notes. So I just look at the literature, and people talk about fluency, coherence, relevancy, and consistency. So relevancy is the thing that you're concerned about. Consistency is what we just chatted, and what you call accuracy, right? Fluency and coherence, we don't really have to talk about them anymore. I think it's pretty solved. Consistency, it's the thing that I've been thinking a lot about, which is factual consistency. And then there's relevancy, which I still haven't figured out a way to solve it yet. I'm just going to run you through a bunch of evals and metrics that I've tried. So there's reference-based metrics. So what reference-based metrics are essentially, you have let's just say you have meeting notes, and then you have reference-based metrics on what the ideal summary should look like, and then you compare your generated summary with ideal. I think that is borderline useless, especially for abstractive summarization, where you're supposed to try to rephrase things. That almost never works. So I tried it. It almost never works. Even cosine similarity, even embedding-based distance metrics, they just don't work because it's just too close to each other. The good stuff and the bad stuff is just too close. Then there's context-free metrics, which don't require relevance. And there are context-based metrics that really just use some kind of n-gram, etc. Again, this don't work. Then finally, there's two other kind of metrics, which are entailment-based metrics and Q&A metrics. So entailment-based metrics is essentially something like this, where given some kind of document, you check against the summary. Is it entailment? Is it entailment? Is it neutral, or is it contradiction? And if you think about it, I mean, I presented this at the AI engineer talk. I don't know how much you caught, probably too much nerves preparing for your own talk. But entailment-based metrics are, where is it? Dang. It's something like this. So if the premise is John likes all fruits, the hypothesis is whether he likes apples, he eats apples daily, or he dislikes apples. The first one's entailment.
Oh yes, this was kind of like the if I could do extraction and citation, can I verify that the answer and the citation makes sense, or for every answer compared to the entire document, is each single like entity correct?
Yes. So this is if we think about this, it's like classical natural language inference. But if you think about it, you can actually apply it to a document and a summary.
Yeah.
And then you can check whether it makes sense or not. I think these work pretty well. So you can try it. I actually have a small prototype. I actually have a small sample that I shared where I tried to just fine tune a model to try to solve this problem on a very difficult data set, the factual inconsistency benchmark. And then it's able to do it well. This approach is able to do it well.
I
And
want to live. I kind of want to live code this in Instructure.
Yeah, do that.
Oh, wait. So it says, okay, here's a document. I extract like summaries. Maybe the summary is like 5 entities, right? And then each entity I verify if the original document is consistent or not.
Yes.
Is that how that works? Do you have like a sample text that you could share with me?
I actually thought I was sharing my entire Chrome tab.
Oh no, you were sharing like one PDF.
I was only sharing. Okay, here we go. Here we share the entire screen. You can see this, right?
Yeah.
So here's an example. So here's an example from the factual inconsistency benchmark. So this is like a news article, right? And then here's the summary. And the data sets, they actually provide consistent summaries and inconsistent summaries. They don't actually highlight the spans like this. I actually highlighted this just to make it clearer which one is what is accurate and what is inaccurate.
Can you send this
And
to
with
me?
yeah, for sure, man. And with this data, you can actually, I'm gonna just, ooh,
That's fine.
I am gonna just drop it in our messages.
Just
Yep.
so
So you can solve that via this natural language inference approach. Now, just for completeness, I also want to talk about, there's another approach which is question generation, question answering. Essentially, it's like you ask an LLM to generate questions using your summary or document, and then you try to answer those questions using this document or summary. You just flip it around. And if you can answer the question using the summary or document, it means that, hey, the data was present. The summary is not making things up that couldn't have been answered by the document.
right.
I have actually not tried this because there's a lot of moving pieces, right? You need a question generation model, you need a question asking model, you need a question answering model. I think with LLMs, you can just rig everything as different agents and you can just try that.
I don't even think you need agents, man. I kind of want to just like build this right now with you.
Yeah. If you want to, actually, we need an eval data set.
Well, we can just play with one and just get the scaffolding in place.
Yeah, sure. I'll let you take the lead then.
I mean, do you think this is a good use of time? Like, I kind of want, because I'm so curious of like how.
I actually don't know. How I'm doing this is I'm actually loading a small local model, and actually this example over here, actually we talk about how we actually train that model. I think in your case, you could actually try using.
And so, okay, here's another question. If I generate like 5 statements, right, and 3 of them are consistent and 2 of them are inconsistent, is your fine tuning just throwing out the 2 that are inconsistent?
My model, what we will do is we'll score it statement by statement, and we'll give each statement a score. So then what you do with that score, it's up to you. What I do is I exclude statements with a very high score.
I see. Do you want to try this? Do you want to try live coding this right now?
I don't think I can code as fast as you, but I'll just follow your lead.
Do you? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's do this because I'm really curious what this. I don't know where my screen is. Where's my .py? Browser can't capture a screen. Try capturing a different screen. This continues. Share screen. Can I do the whole screen then? Okay.
See.
So it's like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you would do is like, consistent. Right? And it's basically what? It's going to be fact, which is a string, and source, which is a string, right?
Yes. So, yep.
Okay. And then what was the class? Maybe I'll do some chain of thought and then is entailment like an actual, like what does the word entailment mean?
It actually means that does your premise is essentially does your premise, which is the sentence after the previous sentence, does it entail? Like, can the premise be found in the hypothesis?
Oh,
In
interesting.
previous word, yeah.
Okay. So I guess it would just be like premise.
Hypothesis and premise. Yeah.
Okay. So
And that's pretty good.
it would be like valid is a bool, right?
Yep.
And this description is what? Does the premise
Entail the hypothesis.
entail the source text?
Yep.
Right? And then, maybe just do chain of thought. Right?
Yep.
A short reasoning to figure out whether or not the premise entails the source text. Something like that. Right?
Okay.
Right, and then so now I have a client equals instructor dot patch OpenAI import instructor import OpenAI. Right?
Yep.
And then this is entailment. And I just have to return client dot chat dot completion dot create, and I'll use model GPT-4. Check this out. Check this out. Oh my god. Okay. Create a prompt with and good messages for this function using the docs instructor. Let's see what it comes up with.
I was actually going to ask you how you actually use cursor for your notes and writing as well, but maybe later. Wow. Sweet.
GPT 4.4 turbo preview. Don't want to do any retries. Something's wrong. Like that?
That's right.
Then,
How does your source look like? Okay, source. Okay, sweet.
okay, so really got to do two things, right? I got to do like for summary in summaries. I spelled it wrong again. Right?
Yep. Can you do one thing? Can it also return the chain of thought? Are you returning?
Yeah,
the chain
it
of
will.
thought,
It
right?
will. It will.
Okay.
First one is false. That make it
Wow,
true.
that's correct.
And the second one is true. Okay.
I wonder in your input, are you actually providing consistent and inconsistent if you screw up your summaries? The string actually includes.
Oh, whoops. Oh, it doesn't, right?
Yeah, now it doesn't. It shouldn't.
Okay. And now we're going to do partial. So we can stream that up. Right.
And I should be using instructor more. If you
Check this
support
out.
if you
So
support Bedrock.
now it's going to be, I'm going to use like from rich import console. Console equals console. Console here. And then summary and summaries for partial summary and summary. Entailment. Okay. Is it what's the function called again? Consistent. I think this will work. No. Oh. False.
Nice.
True.
True. Sweet.
Right. And then so the second thing is like what? Extract these summaries.
Oh, you mean the question answer generation? So the second thing is from the summary, generate a question. Now try to answer the question using the source document, and if you can answer it, means that the summary is consistent. I think
Okay,
it sounds like a lot more work. Yeah.
Now it's like class question base model, right? Make one with question and answer 2.
Yep.
Okay. And then it's going to be def generate question from source text, right?
Generate question from summary. From the summary.
From
because
this.
No, from the summary. Because what you want to do is you want to
Yes.
generate a question from the summary. If it can be accurately answered by the source, it means that it is consistent with the source. But the flip side, is generate a question from the source. And if you're trying to answer with the summary, and if your summary is not able to answer, that means you have a recall issue.
Oh,
you understand? So it's not mirror. Yeah, it's not symmetrical.
okay. This is why I think it's helpful to implement, because I didn't understand that. Right.
Yep. So you can generate a question from either side. One of it assesses for precision, the other side assesses for recall.
Okay. So now it's going to be, I generate. Okay. Is there another? Do I need another function?
Yes. Answer question.
Ah.
Answer the question using the flip side. You generate a summary from you generate a question from either the okay, let's say you generate a question from the summary. If you can answer the question using the doc, it means your precision is correct. Did it make sense?
Okay, so I have a question and a summary now, right?
No, the doc.
So the
document.
source.
The source, yes.
Yeah. And source is a string. And then what do I return? Just the answer itself, right?
Return whether the answer can be found in the document. If it can be found in the document, that means your summary was correct. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what would be the schema of this response? Like, it's still entailment, right?
Yes. So
interesting.
There's a little bit more nuance here. One is you generate a question from the summary, okay, and then you try to answer it from the document. If you can answer it, it's fine. That means it wasn't making something up.
Question is going to be generate question from the summary, right?
Yep.
The second thing is going to be answer the question.
Yep.
And
so
really
then
it's like
you
answerable,
check,
right?
Yes, is it answerable?
Okay,
and then after you check you check if the answer is actually in the document.
Right. So you are highly close to. Do I give it the answer too? Like, check if a question could
be answered. Oh yeah.
Answered
from a
source text.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's like source text. We also give it the answer.
Yes. When you generate the question, generate the answer as well.
Yeah.
And then
you
check. Yes. You give it answer, and then after that you ask. I don't know if you want to give it the answer. Maybe answer checking should be in another module, in another method. But you can just give it the answer and after that check if the answer matches the original answer. That is how you test for hallucination.
Okay, so the answer should just be a string then, right?
Yep. And then
so now I'm gonna just print the question.
Print original answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Question model dump JSON. Oh, like this already has like an extra step that I didn't realize. So this is the original question.
Yes.
This is the summary. Right. And then you generate a question, and then you generate an answer from that. Right. And so right now there should be incorrect. So something weird should be happening, is what you're saying.
Let's see.
Wait, the first one is has been launched from complaint from a resident. The question text.
What?
So the summary is this has been launched. The answer is here. Does this make sense? The launch of a new service was prompted by a resident's complaint. But it's not supposed to be here, right? No, it's right here.
But the launch is not due to the resident's complaint. The service is not due to the resident's complaint. The procedures are due to the resident's complaint.
Okay, so maybe we need like chain of thought or something. Answer base model. Chain of thought. Right. What we're suggesting? Hey, did you just notice that when I edited this, that edited?
Yeah. Is that
because
cursor?
Cursor is doing it's because Cursor is doing like edit prediction.
I see.
So because it recommended string that get replaced to answer, it also figured out how to do it there.
Nice. Answer question from the source. What is the launch? The launch of a new service was prompted by Okay. What service was launched? Okay, I'm not sure if it's correct.
So but we probably just need a stronger prompt, or
I don't
the
know.
answer, following a complaint from a resident, the ILA have launched a service where vehicles and pedestrians embark and disembark the cows very separately. This one says, so this is inconsistent.
So it's give me a second. I'm looking at the original data. Actually, could you navigate to? Oh, you can't share screen, right?
What's up?
I was wondering if you could navigate to this, so we could take a look at it.
Which
the link
thing?
in the private chat. Oh wait, stream comments.
Okay, let me just stop sharing my screen. Interesting, because yeah, I feel like what you're talking about is like so important to what I'm doing, but I just want to understand. So
if you look at that, like if you scroll down all the way to the examples, like can you see that? Okay, vehicles will disembark separately. And it's new procedures. I'm not sure it's a new service. So
okay, so there's like a literacy component to this.
There's a little bit of nuance in there as well. So that's the difficult part, and that's why I think the entailment approach is far more straightforward and would just work out of the box. Whereas the question answering, question generation, you do need to tweak your question generation approach.
Right. Interesting. But I feel like this entailment thing is like very reasonable. Let me show you one thing I have in mind already when I see this. It's okay, we're gonna get rid of the question answering stuff. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Right. And instead I say, okay, there's a consistent thing, right? Let's rename this to, what's it called? Summary, right? And let's call this and just entailment, right? Okay. What I would actually do in practice is I would have something that is like summary base model. And then I would define like a validator on summary.
Oh, sounds good. That means after you generate it, you immediately validate it.
Yeah, so I could even do this, right? Define. And then info is like validation info. Have you seen this stuff from instructor?
No, I have not.
Oh my god, I'm gonna blow your mind. And then entailment equals consistent no, let's just do a single summary first. I think we're like making this too complex. Return the else. Is entailment has no? It's just called valid. Okay, then we update field validator, and we validation info. I think it's like that. What's going on here? Known as then create a summary function using the client. Wonder if it does it right. Except model. That's basically it. Then what I can do is, I don't know if you've seen this, but I can do validation context.
Mm-hmm.
That. And so what this means is all of my validators will have access to this dictionary.
Nice.
I don't know what's going on here. Oh, I didn't close the brackets. Yeah, so, context equals. It's like if context is not there, then do that. All right. Okay. Do you see what this code is doing?
Let's run it.
Now we're gonna print and generate summary source text. Just like that. It's gonna take a while because we're actually doing this. Oh, we said something.
Iterables. Do you
No,
still have
I
that
did
list somewhere? Oh.
No, I turned it to be a string by accident. Okay, yes.
Is that the summary?
It looks like the original string. That's hilarious. What's going on? Oh, that's just a single. What is it? A single sentence summary of the original text. And let's use like 3.5 turbo to generate the summary because it's kind of like. Following residents complain, the Isle of Wight Council will implement separate embarkment and disembarkation procedures. And then let's just print stuff.
Yeah, can we print the entailment result?
Yeah. both dump JSON indent too. The vehicles and
Nice.
pedestrians will embark and disembark the coast ferry separately.
Yes, that's correct.
In response to a complaint from the residents. Right, that's true. So we've
Yes,
skipped who
yes.
said it, resulting in a temporary lower service while new measures are. That's correct. And
Yes, so
have this whole chain of thought to verify that it's true.
you want to log the chain of thought. So in case you have anything
I mean, we could
in
turn it
this,
off, right? Like this is the beautiful thing where like we can just like comment this out, and now it'll just be faster. Right?
yeah, you'll just run in the. Oh, you actually don't need a chain of thought. I see. Yeah.
But as like, I wonder how many times would we actually generate something that's not true, though. You know what I mean? But I guess that's like the one. That is the point where like the 1 in 100 cases that it does get something false. That is where it is important.
I think from what I've heard, and an ideal hallucination baseline, like you could probably get as low as 1 or 2%, and it's hard to go lower than that. That's what I heard.
Right.
So what we're trying to safeguard against is really that 1 or 2%.
Let's try the other two, right?
Charles is here. Oh, how? Let me.
Yeah, one
Let
is
me
false
just.
and one is true. Like, yeah, GPT-4 is really good.
Yeah, but then again, this data is also open source, so it
Sure,
could have been
sure.
trained on it. Yeah.
Oh, does Eugene does Charles want to jump on?
I'm sending him the StreamYard.
Yeah. Wait, can you send him? Because I'm like super.
I am sending him the StreamYard. Charles,
All
I
right.
DM'd you the StreamYard.
With that
Yeah,
said,
so
Jason's AI assisted programming is 2050 suite level. It's not. I just wrote the library, so I spent all my time thinking about how to design code.
but
To
it's
use
really
in
pretty
Flutter.
impressive. It's really impressive.
But it's nice that like, but you see how I like could comment out chain of thought,
Yes.
right? And it's just like I can turn on additional compute, and it's like located in one place, right?
And you know what the amazing thing about that is that without going into too many details, you can use a smaller model and make it work harder to get better results faster, cheaper than a larger model.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
yeah,
definitely think so. All right, let's
I've
add
done that so much.
Charles up.
Oh, Charles is here.
Yo, what up?
Hey.
I joined and quietly watched y'all cook on that entailment example for a few
It was
minutes
Jason.
before I said
Yeah.
hello. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna use entailment, to generate my training data. Like, have you seen my distillation code?
I haven't seen the code. I think I saw you posting on Twitter about it.
Yeah,
like a
right.
decorator.
So you can make a decorator, but it'll emit exactly the fine-tuned JSON lines. Right.
So the problem with entailment to create training code is that defects happen so seldom that it's not easy to train a model to predict it. Or rather, inconsistent summaries happen so seldom that you have an imbalance problem.
Yeah,
So
wait, can't you just upsample these negatives, right? Like
you can upsample negatives, you can downsample positives, but the diversity is still going to be low. So what I do is I have a small model. So you can imagine there's going to be some model just hallucinate wildly, right? Not GPT or anything. I use those models to generate actual defects, and I use that to train a small model, and then I hook it up to an active learning process.
Yeah.
Which just churns through, selects those that are clearly wrong, label it, churns through, select those, and then that's my data flywheel.
I'm actually building an example out for David. Do you know David Dohan from OpenAI?
Yeah.
I am going to create a instructor example where I sort of optimize the few-shot examples in the prompt to confuse a text classifier. So
Say
it's
more.
like,
What does that mean?
so it's like first you have a prompt that says like create 10, like this is the text classifier, create 10 results that might confuse and get the wrong answer, right? And then I'm going to put those examples in the prompt. And so given these examples, create 10 more examples that will confuse the text classifier. And the idea is like, I want to be able to iteratively build a prompt where the text classifier like cannot predict the correct label. Right.
But then these are like adversarial examples where you're like trying to maintain the fact that a human would still agree that the label is like some particular label, like the panda with noise equals gibbon example.
I think the goal is to say, well, you know, there's just an actual numerical objective. Like if David says like I want all class probabilities to be 1 over the number of classes, like maybe that's the objective. If he wants to say like I want to maximize like log loss, that's the objective too. But the idea is that like, yeah, can you sample data on the boundary of the decision boundary?
I see.
Solely using a large language model and nothing else.
Yeah, because I think David's like real examples are probably much more complicated than like sentiment analysis, but
yeah, okay.
I think he's been trying to figure out a way of doing synthetic data generation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked.
Nice.
So Catchy Chess asks, can you use the entailment call for improving query decomposition? What is query decomposition?
I can have I'll share my screen again. Also, Charles, I'm curious. You're spinning off a bunch of instructor extraction tasks. I'm curious what you're actually working on for that.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you about that once we answer this question.
Query decomposition, all these examples. Is it this one? Oh god, no, this is like way too complicated. Do you see task planner, query planner somewhere?
Task
I have
planner
too many examples.
support.
Oh man.
What, they don't have Command P support in Cursor?
I don't know how to do it.
You can't ask your chat? Command L?
Oh my god. I'm trying to find the example.
I started using Cursor because of Hamel and you. Now you're disappointing me, man.
Query decomposition was this thing.
Query planning, okay.
Yeah, the idea is like I can actually take in a question.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, like what's the difference between the population of Canada and Jason's home country? And you can build out this DAG that you can just send off to some dispatch. Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can just like say like reason about the validity of this data structure, right?
Then it's just really chain of thought. You don't really need entailment.
Yeah. Like, because I mean, again, it's like anytime you generate a question. No, I think this is just like regular search.
Yeah, I'm curious about Charles and extraction.
Yeah. So I've been working on the examples repository for Modal. Like we just got all these examples showing like here's how to run Stable Diffusion, like here's how to do Whisper transcription, like all this stuff. And it's like this big sprawling GitHub repo, like the one Jason was just struggling to look through. What are all of my examples? What are they all about? And I was like, man, this is a great use case for the extraction of structured information from unstructured or semi-structured data.
I love that.
It would be fun. I bet we could use instructor to examine the examples and also feed the very same example into this process that is processing the examples. So the demo is that you take this code file that's like, here's how to use like instructor, and then like map it map your extraction job over like a bunch of modal workers. But then the example is just run it on one thing, and it runs it on its own code and says like, okay, this example is about instructor and like, it uses like these dependencies and these modal features and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because you could like take this whole file and say like, okay, what are the dependencies? What are like key features of like uses GPU or not? Give me some like 10 tags and a summary that's optimized for retrieval.
Yeah, exactly. So all I implemented was actually just the piece that I was too lazy to figure out how to do in software 1.0 style, which was like, what are the dependencies and what are the modal features? Probably could have done that with like a regex or like like some Python import magic. But I was like, why would I do that when I can just pay a 1/1000th of a cent every time to have GPT 3.5 guess it for me? And then everything you just described is like downstream additional things that you can do once you have the like basics hooked up.
I have a quick question, Charles. Do you think about extraction as similar to a classification task? And the reason why I say this is I'm thinking about evals for extraction.
Yeah.
So you can imagine I have a bunch of reviews. I want to extract sentiments and aspects.
Yeah.
Or how do I think about evaluating this? Again,
I definitely
just
can't
for fun.
imagine that you have a number of reviews, Eugene. Like I can imagine that.
Or maybe I just
want to
extract. maybe I write a lot of crap. I just want to extract the common themes in my online stuff, in my online writing. How would I do that? I think it's very easy for me to do that, but how would I evaluate that? And make sure it's not hallucinating, like Jason was concerned about hallucinating summaries.
Right. Yeah. So two-pronged thing here. One is that I try and like reframe the problems such that a like lower quality from the ML model is still fine.
Yes.
It's like, just like try and reframe the problem so that like a noisy signal is still valuable. Like, don't turn it into like if it's integrated with code, don't turn it into something that alerts people because people really hate being alerted for something that's not real. But maybe it's something that's like more of like an analytics thing that you like can look at when you're doing some work, and then there's like a human in the loop. So I think that's pretty common advice, but I think that this is like it by keeping things to a pre-trained model with simple prompting and simple code flow around it, you avoid creating tech debt for yourself in the form of like fine-tuned model weights that don't transfer to new tasks as easily, or that prevent you or kind of lock you in from trying out a new model. Like if you have an OpenAI fine-tune, maybe now that fine-tune just happens to be slightly better on your current metrics than the new Claude models are, and now you've got whereas like it's still you can jump and then do a little prompt tuning. So that's a bit like that's not an answer to your question, but that's my like first answer. It's like don't even try and fine-tune your way to success.
I love that. And Hamel, I just dropped you the link. I think I have a very similar mental model, Charles. Like there's things that are backend only, and then there's things that are front end, right? The backend only is okay to be maybe lower quality, and then and there's the front, but the front end stuff, then you gotta be a little bit more careful.
Another thing way to think about it too, it's like if you do this for analysis, like one thing to make sure of is okay, if the errors are at random, then the averages are fine.
If it's systematically random, it's fine.
Right. And so there's a bit of reasoning there. I think it's important to figure out,
because come on, A/B testing is not perfect either. I mean, a lot of machine learning and statistics is just
exactly.
So this works well. So like this is a good reason to like make sure that you are always Genshi Genbutsu like looking at the actual data and not just like relying on these on the like numbers.
So what I also do now is I have GPT-4 chain of thought generate labels, and then I see how well 3.5 does, and I'll fine tune 3.5 on the chain of thought for labels to only predict the label. It's like
it works.
So much magic.
That works really well.
The thing is like the answer here is that like whenever you're trained, like what is a model? A model is an executable version of a data generating process. And so when the data generating process that you want to mimic is itself also a model, also an executable like version of data generating process, then it becomes super easy. So yeah, like fine tuning GPT 3.5 to match GPT 4, putting it into open model weights. Actually, Hammel's tweet about fine tuning is what triggered me to like post about that.
What is the tweet?
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the context?
You were talking about how like fine tuning was so much better than fine tuning to match like a teacher model distillation was so much better than other things that you try and fine tune. Do you remember this?
No, but you keep saying maybe it'll come to me. I have no.
I recall something spicy Hamel said, which is, if you're using a constraint generation fine-tune model, then your fine-tuning sucks.
Oh yeah.
That
Oh
one I
yeah.
love.
Is that what you? Is that you're referring to?
No,
that?
that's probably not that.
That's a distinct spicy Hamel tweet.
And it's completely right. It's completely right. Yeah.
It's actually a subtweet.
Of yourself?
My God.
No.
I'm an expert at subtweets, so
I learned from Jason because he kind of like turned me on to this. Just let just release the negative
having
energy.
Having a shitty attitude on Twitter.
Just release the negative energy into the ether. Don't like harbor it inside.
Just shake it out. Yeah.
Nice.
There was something.
It was Wing Leon's blog post about you were it's the minimal example of the most important technique in fine tuning. Use a teacher model to enhance or generate high quality training data for a student model.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and my take on that is that the fact that you now have like an executable data generating process that you were trying to mimic with another executable data generating process just removes so much of the potential issues with like setting up fine tuning, defining the task, ensuring data quality, like all this stuff. It just like kind of goes.
Now that it's just Y hat, you know. It's like
exactly.
Amazing.
If I may, I do want to challenge Charles on probably a little deeper though. If you had to come up with a statistical and maybe programmatic approach to evaluate your extraction, how would you do it? If you could think of anything, because that's one of the problems I'm trying to solve myself, and I don't see that many people trying to do it at scale like you do. And of course, if there's this is just a fun project, nothing too serious, then it's also fine.
Yeah.
I got some takes, but I'll.
I would love to hear it. Yeah.
I was gonna raise money for a company that does the evaluation of structured data output, and I was like, this is not gonna make any money, so I didn't.
Why? Too easy, or it's like almost 99.9% accurate? You don't even have to evaluate.
I spent the past week trying to figure out like sales, and it's all like pipeline issues, basically. Like all your money problems are pipeline issues. Like I had a tweet that was like, if your AI API calls are prohibitively expensive, have you considered having a better business?
Yep.
Right. Or patient. It's like, they get cheaper over time.
Yes.
But also it's like I find that like for these data extraction tasks, the people that care the most about it are these like back office automation tasks, where I just don't think you would ever be able to sell like a $20 per seat service to evaluate your like JSON extractors. But that said, I think a lot of it is like, if it's a list, the length of lists, if it's categories, the distribution of categories, and it's like you want to generate such like distributions of data and verify that like your data is like on distribution rather than like the text itself being the thing, right? Because like string is like the most boring type that comes out of the LLM, I think.
Let me answer this. There are quite a few startups that spun out around evaluation. Do you think they will actually work? So what I mean by work is, will people actually pay money for evals? Can you actually have an eval platform that just works for 80% of use cases?
Charles is smiling. I want to hear his answer.
Hamel is. I just have a shit post. Hamel has something interesting to say, I'm
sure. Most of my thoughts are shit posts.
No pressure.
I like think in shit posts, like even to myself, even when I'm alone in the room. But I don't know. Like I feel like every time I go like create evaluations, it's like so domain specific. It's like
yes.
I really feel skeptical. I want there to be something to help me. I maybe, I do. And there's some things on the periphery, like having a nice user interface that I can like put the data into. That's kind of nice, or something. There's some small
Commenting and feedback
repeatable,
systems, right?
yeah, something like that. There's some things that are kind of generic.
Here's another
But
thing I realized is like I used to manage like a $300,000-$400,000 like data labeling budget, and this is because to like do image tasks, you need to just spend a shit ton of money and hire like 400 people to label like 500,000 images. In terms of your training data, like you only need like 100 examples, and they need to be very high quality. And so instead of having to work on like relabeling and consensus type logic in your data labeling, you just need to have like very fine grained feedback. Like the transcripts that I am processing are like sales transcripts. Like I can't even review that to be good or not, because like this is an email that's going to be sent to a private equity firm to potentially close a like $20 million deal. Like I am not writing the evaluation function, nor am I writing a prompt for that. Like, the eval has to be the dude going like, hey, like I paid you $400 to extract data out of this transcript because I'm about to make a private equity proposal. Like, I really care. And the thing they care about is like, oh, you cited 2 quotes, but since I was the person who gave these 20 hours of interviews, I know there are 4 quotes.
Charles is taking notes right now. It's getting dangerous.
He is with his pink
that is the crazy eval that's like super hard to recover. Like,
so I think in the context of this, right, in the context of what Hamel said about domain expertise and Jason mentioning this, am I going down is it pointless for me to try to write a developer's guide to application evals? Right,
No.
things like I'm just really thinking of really basic things like classification, summarization, translation, the very basics.
So like,
I
let's
actually
just
don't know
let's
if
take like the beginning of your sentence is it a waste of time for me to write X down guide? And then like, doesn't matter what you put in there. The answer is no.
No,
Like,
Whoa.
it's kind of, like,
I mean, is there an answer? Is there a decent
Hummel,
size
have
answer?
you ever heard of this guy Jeremy Howard? He has like pretty much the same opinion as you on that.
of the writing stuff?
Yeah. Sorry, it's just like one of the most notable features of the fast AI community is the like write stuff down and post a blog about it.
Yeah, I probably learned it from that. Yeah, I did learn it from that. I think like, because people want at least to know what other people are doing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like 100% generalizable.
Yeah, and I guess we had a small thing, Jason and I, just now, where he just coded up in 2050 SWE level style an entailment thing into his instructor thing. I actually don't know if that's gonna work for all use cases, but for me, that's what I found to be extremely powerful for now.
Yeah,
but I'm just trying to
actually,
get
so
feedback.
I have maybe a suggestion, Eugene, that goes back to your question, your like challenge at the beginning about like mapping this onto probability and statistical learning theory. Like, what maybe would one helpful way to frame it is, what is a good baseline eval for each basic type in, let's say, the like Pydantic type system, or the like Python type system. It's like you got evals, you got suggested evals for them.
Yeah, back when I was like considering to raise money. Yeah, because it was like lists could be list of strings. If they're lists of short strings, and you can do counts. If there's list of long strings, you do like the distribution of lengths of counts. If it's numbers, you have like, but within ranges, you have like, if it's dates, you can go like, okay, like date ranges should be X, Y, Z. But
yeah, basically you can map each
like
of
there's a
those
type
individually.
system, right?
Yeah, and you map each element of the type system onto some kind of like each basic or atomic element onto some specific type of machine learning task. So there's like ordinal regression takes advantage of like, you basically need like topological information or metric information or whatever that your type offers you, and then that maps onto a machine learning problem. And then if you can also do things with like type constructors, so things like list or dict or whatever, then you really have like you have like a nice catalog. And then each one of them will have like little tips and tricks where it's like, if you're doing enums, structure the problem so that when you extend the enum, it's easy to extend your evals, right? Like have an other category that is like fixed at 99 in its index in the enum, and then you can expand outward up to that point. There's like, those are the kind, I think like collecting up those ideas and tips and tricks is like valuable little cookbook.
One great thing about Pydantic too is the error messages contain the location of the error and the error type. So not only like right now you're assuming that all types have been correctly validated, right? But you could also like how many times am I like returning floats versus ints? Like that could be a bad example. So that would just be like int parsing error from input type float. When you get into really complex nested objects, you can actually evaluate the success rate of the validation of every single path. So if a character has a list of properties and properties has like keys and values, you can say how many times does like character dot star dot values has error messages. But the issue is I fundamentally don't think anyone gives a shit.
And it's like very common in JavaScript, like in all the JavaScript code bases I see, because you can have like the very complex objects in JavaScript, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then basically people just turn that into the schema. And, like, and when I look at the schema, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it's insane. It's like,
what were you smoking when you wrote that schema?
It's like nested, like 20 levels deep. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, can we simplify? Like, this is confusing for me. Like, how's a language model?
That's just superhuman code.
Yeah,
you know.
They're just writing GraphQL, man. That's just what's happening.
Yeah. Does anyone like GraphQL? I never liked it. Okay.
Nobody likes GraphQL.
Wait, Jason, I just want to pull something out from the last conversation. Yep. So I was thinking about issues in the target domain, which is like you have this final type, and you're like, well, is it extracting the right value? But you were talking about errors at parsing. So there is a unique feature of this, which is that the model generates in a particular type. You have this like base type or special type, which is like list of Unicode character. And then you have these parsers that then take that down into these target types. Right. And then one of your key things is that function is a partial function, right? It's not defined on every element.
Exactly.
And so you need to so that these are things that are starting to add additional structure to the problem that you can encode
like with the summary. If you do summary string, you're gonna build a validator that says taking the string and the source text, is it consistent?
Yeah.
So you could have a summary string and then a percentage on whether or not the summaries are consistent with the source text, right? And that is a validator that you can monitor that. But I was I don't think anyone's gonna pay for that.
No, that is valuable for
unless
business,
you're a bank,
right? I mean, you were talking about it, right? I mean, that's a problem that you're trying to solve. I mean, for some use cases, not having that kind of validation could be a ship blocker, right?
That's why I like this group, by the way, because Jason, he just explained that in plain English, that anyone can understand. But the LLM space is full of tools you need a compiler and a reverse modulation gizmo.
It's a cognitive architecture that ensures enterprise safety for the developer class.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really insane, and I just hate it. I hate that.
I love a good cognitive architecture. I spent time learning cognitive science in the 2010s, and I like the idea that it might turn out to be useful. But
man, it's just physics is just applied math. Yeah, I mean, I had this whole moment yesterday where LLM compilers came out months ago, and then the new thing is chain of abstraction. I was this is just question decomposition, and I feel they're making up new words so they can take up SEO space, so their keywords rank highly, right? But I was damn, it makes it feel way more magical. It's just types. It's a type system.
I see a lot of people talking about things like DSPy, etc. Do you all use it? Has it been helpful? I haven't dug into it, so I actually don't know. I'm just looking at test with you guys.
DSPy, you know what it is.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I heard ideas pie, and I was
no, DSPy, yeah, DSPy.
There
I've
could
not
be an
tried it.
alternate
Yeah.
name for it. Ideas pie.
I think there was a comment somewhere about it.
Lightweight classifiers trained on the spot. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what I'm doing, training a lightweight classifier. That's exactly the con that Charles pointed out, whereby, now this thing is very specific to your use case. When a new model comes up, it may not be transferable. Yeah.
But I mean, if the process is like very repeatable, like you store the data that you do that fine tune and you expect it to work well, yeah, I can believe that you can avoid the tech debt problem that I was talking about and stay agile. But yeah,
The fine-tuned pipeline and the data is transferable. The model is just
implementation.
You can just swap it anytime. That's the thing. I realize now that the pipeline and the data is what's valuable.
Yeah.
I think this question is really funny. Make it talk less. But I think there's a bunch of open source libraries now, like Llama CPP, that does like things like speculative decoding, and just by using that, you can actually improve the latency of these things.
But okay, so there's latency and there's perceived latency, and I think a lot of people who are attack perceived latency by trying to improve the actual latency of the system when they could add a spinner wheel and then people would relax, right? And so one actually nice feature of the LangGraph API that I was looking at yesterday is that it basically, the thing that you get in exchange for defining a graph and going into their domain specific language is that you get a fast API compatible system that streams out events, and so you can define those events to be things that people interacting with your app would like to see. So it's I'm currently looking at some documentation, and then it moves in the graph a couple of steps, and it's oh, actually, I think I got it wrong. I'm checking myself again. And then
what is it called again? What is it?
This is LangGraph, which is one of the abstractions from LangChain.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's providing the user with feedback step by step the way.
So you basically you could stream events out of the process that's generating your completion or whatever. And because you're going to generate those events, you can use them to give information to the user, provide maybe shortcut out and provide information to them, and otherwise reduce what's the perceived latency without making that actual sequence of LLM calls with validation and chain of thought any faster.
Yeah. Should we build that in Python right now?
Oh man. If we wanted to, we'd probably have to use the LangGraph explaining LangGraph agent that I built.
No. We would use it with Rich Console. You don't use Rich Console?
Rich Console's cool, man. If you use Rich Console, probably.
Rich, the TUI thing?
Yeah. Because I use everything. I use the spinners. I use console printing and clearing, so I can stream out the data. It makes all these things super nice.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking about an application for this streaming of events thing. I'm thinking of that as primarily for web apps or applications that are communicating with a language model over an internet connection, right? And then it's not in the terminal.
So how does LangGraph how does that relate to streaming? Sorry? So it seems like it's doing it's a lot more than streaming. So I just want to
it is, you define a bunch of branching points, each of which can be decisions made by an agent or can be software, whatever, and that becomes your graph. Which the distinction between that and the LangChain expression language, it's LCEL is all about just DAGs. So LangGraph allows you to have loops, so it has termination conditions built in, and as part of the when you turn that graph that you've just described into an actual program, the program doesn't just give me inputs and eventually I terminate and give you outputs. It spits out state information at every graph transition.
Okay.
And that can become like it's like you wrap that in Lang's serve, and now you have a fast API compatible thing with all these streaming events. Put some web sockets on that, and now what used to be like sitting and waiting 50 seconds for cognition is now watching some delightful little like language model like work go by of like
oh, he's doing this now. I'm looking into this thing. Oh, okay, blah blah, whatever. Okay.
Like you're it's like your little minion and you can see what they're up to,
Yeah.
It's like
Notion does a really good job of that for their RAG app. I don't know if you've tried the Notion QA, but it's like, I'm making this search. I found these documents. Let me write my answer.
Yeah. Love the Notion QA bot. Like you drop into a new company and they got this big Notion. You have no idea how to find anything. You're just like, what's the code? Like, what's the bathroom code? And it's like, I got you, bestie. It's 4537, and it found it in some doc. And now you found the office doc, and you're cooking with gas.
Oh yeah, I always forget what like the key codes are. It's like, how do I get in the building, guys?
Yeah, we don't need artificial super intelligence. We just need like absolute midwit tier hooked up to data. They
need that in Slack. Why doesn't Slack have this? You're dropping the ball, man.
I mean, I think the actual answer is that is a really big vector database, and like it's probably not cheap.
Expensive. Yeah.
Because like you have text search. Just like if I search key code on Slack, I could probably also find the key code. Like to be honest,
and it's cheap.
But the we're gonna use semantic search. That makes it super expensive. Like
I think it also depends on what
the Pinecone bill is for Notion, right?
Yeah, depends on where you're hosting your document vectors.
Has any of you tried just doing your vector database as like a single large matrix that's loaded into VRAM and then you send vectors to it?
I have driven $60 million of annual recurring revenue off an NumPy array and a fast API app. So yes.
Okay.
I use NumPy arrays like most of the time.
Yep.
So I had 3 million rows, 512 dimensions, and brute force NumPy cosine dot product was basically
exact cosine dot product.
Yeah, and because we were selling clothes, right? So by the time we knew a user had to be recommended clothing user our embeddings, we're like, we know what warehouse we're shipping them from, we know what size they are, and we know what things they've already like bought. So just by doing this like 50 milliseconds.
You can just normalize both and then just do a dot product.
Yeah. Another thing we do is use UMap. So we go from 100 dimensions to like 24.
But that's the thing you just described is like in float 32, that is like 6 gigabytes. Like you could fit that in VRAM, like, and then you can just do a matmul, and matmuls are fast. Like
you do it in R. The matmuls are in L1 cache. Like
people talk about like, oh, what am I going to do if I have a billion vectors? It's like, it feels like it's not that hard to fit like a billion.
It's an age-old thing. Remember like big data and like Hadoop and all that. So like
I was doing word count.
So many times it was like, just get a big VM. Just fuck this.
Yeah.
Get a big VM.
Yeah.
So many times.
Yeah. Like I used to work on like analyzing like the social, like the Twitter graph. And that I think was the only time I had big data because like the follower row of Justin Bieber was 7 gigabytes of integers. And I was like, okay, like this is big data. Like I can't, if I left join, it's going to cost me 3 terabytes. Like this is big data. But there's so many people using like HDFS to store like a 30 gigabyte file. And it's like your MacBook is like 2 terabytes is like this big.
Oh, totally. There's this like like there's an example like when you open a GitHub repo, there's like topics, like you can put little topics on it, whatever. And then they have like little recommendations sometimes like that pops up like whatever. So that recommendation engine was like this insane like 3,000 line code base written in like Spark and like machine learning, all this stuff.
Beautiful.
And we're just like, okay, let's just make it like, basically like 50 lines of code on a VM. And just it's like basically like basic topic modeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Nice.
That's all. And it's just
Love
like
it.
like LDA.
Just basic I use a library called
Gensim.
No, I use something a little bit esoteric. It's called like Turi Create. It's like an Apple. It's like it's you have to be like a 2010s data scientist to like know what I'm talking about. It's like it got taken over by Apple, but like they said like for this one particular thing they have like an amazing API. You just call it's like 3 or 4 lines of code, just does it very well.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful. Just do one thing well. That's so funny. Yeah, man, people are writing too much code.
Yeah, it's like it's a liability, delete it.
Oh, how do you coach that, Hamel? Coach people to think simpler. Can you coach that, or can it only be hired?
Sorry, when the code.
Can you coach someone to think simpler instead of sophistication? I mean, like, there's also one side of things is like, to be promoted, you need to build this big system and everything. It's like,
and actually, I had the same problem too.
No PhDs.
In a way. Like I had like the same problem too myself. I had to be coached to think simpler. How
do you coach that?
I think it's just really telling people it's okay to be simple. Like people like me saying you need someone that you look up to that says, you know what, just use a VM.
Yep.
That's all you need. Because like you think it's uncool. You're like, oh, I have to use this like crazy thing, otherwise it's not scalable. You don't know. Deep and down inside, you're like, why don't you just use a VM? And then the moment someone says that, they're like, just use a VM. You're like, yes.
You need someone with the moral authority.
Yeah,
I mean, with the credibility and everything. Okay.
Yeah, that's all you
need. A role
like,
model.
You need like someone to just green light common sense. Once the green light, no. I'm serious.
No, but why my tweet? Why do you my tweet this morning? That's like, I was like Hebia was like, AI does not have all the answers. You need to do more than just like RAG and vector databases. And I was like, you could have paid me $7,500 to tell you that. Like, you could have just paid me. Like, it's just like.
It's true. It's true.
Greenlighting common sense is. I also think that's why, like, especially with Hamel, it's like being the consultant lets you be outside the company and like say the common sense thing. I find that like that's kind of an observation I've made too. It's like, oh yeah, like I can say it, but the engineer like on the team with the manager who's being told to do this thing, I was like, this is the wrong problem to be solving. Right? Like this makes no money.
Yeah.
Right? This is 1% of the issues we're facing. What's going on? But I also feel like when I try to make complex things, it always came from like insecurity. It's like I need people to know that like, I'm like smart and clever and like a good programmer. And so I'm gonna spend 3 days trying to mock my database rather than like moving on with like the next task. Right.
We try to mock our databases, and the databases are just mocking us.
Yeah, that's straight up. Like,
I was just debating with Jason.
That's a good one.
Should we mock our machine learning models? I actually don't have that. I don't think we have an answer for that.
Fast and slow.
But yeah, difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you mock materialized views when you mock your database, or do you just that's just like too far out? Like
I actually mock every query I run in production. Yeah, with an LLM. Yeah, I feel like some of this complexity ends up coming from like an insecurity thing, where like, oh, like I should have 100% text coverage. And like, yeah, you're not gonna spend 2 weeks doing that, man. Like, if I'm paying you to do something, like, move on. Yeah. Right? Like, this is not the right metric. And I think it's also probably an issue of like people not seeing the bigger picture. Like,
how do you teach people to see the bigger picture?
I just ask them, like, does this actually move the metric we care about? right? Like someone
yeah, I
was
think-
like, I'm not using Pydantic to do my like structured output library. I'm gonna use data classes. And I was like, okay. Now you have 800 lines of like JSON schema generation code. Like, did that get you revenue? Like,
I
does it
think,
get you
but
users?
part of the problem is that actually I think most people in an organization are not motivated by the organization's goals, and so like there's part of it is maybe like lack of skill or lack of whatever, and but also some people are just like, no, I like to solve puzzles, and I am paid to solve puzzles for some reason. And like, so if you talk to them about like, what about the health of the business, what about like downstream impact, whatever, like people who are equity compensated either have like a temperamental tendency to care about that, or like there's the literal dollar incentive.
Yeah.
But I think for a very large fraction of other people, it's like I like to make the test screen because it's like Zen gardening and it makes me happy, not like
Yes.
I'm committing code so that shareholder value is increased.
Yeah.
Can that be improved? Can that be coached, or is that something that can only be hired?
You got to be a dictator, man. That's hard to get out of people. Because like
It's a
you hire
culture
smart
thing.
people, they want to be smart.
Yeah.
It's a culture thing because all your incentives, promotions, and everything revolve around complexity. Then like
That's
Then you're just
right.
rewriting everything in Rust.
Yeah. That's a problem the tech industry has. Resume-driven development. I'm trying to figure out how to combat it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also just feel like there's not that much mentorship that happens in software. Like, I also find that that's just generally the case overall. I just haven't seen it a lot in the companies I work with, where it's like, oh, let's pair program. Oh, I see you're like reinventing the wheel. Like, use this library. Like, why are we doing that? Like, why are we reading CSVs like line by line? Like, just use pandas. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What percentage of the teams that you work with, what percentage of individuals in the teams you work with actually have this quality? If you could share, Jason, Hamel, because I'm trying to think, I sort of have a rough number in my mind. I'm trying to see, is it above median, below median? Okay, maybe too serious a topic for AI engineering office hours.
No, man.
I'm
Honestly,
counting
I
right now.
don't know. Like I've been working a lot of companies, and I feel like I've only been mentored in open source.
Yes.
Like that's the only place where people have taken the time, the detailed time to like really read my code and really have a deep conversation about it back and forth over lots, I think because there's like a exchange there. There's an exchange in open source. Like I'm giving my time. The other person reviewing the code is like, okay, this person is giving their time. I'm going to give my time too. Whereas like at work, sometimes that doesn't happen because there's like, look, I just got to get this done, whatever.
I see.
But also, open source is a competition to homestead the noosphere. And the more you mentor people and so cause them to think like you, the more effectively you can like spread your ideas and
Homestead
like
the what sphere?
cause
Sorry? Yeah, I don't want to. What is that word?
noosphere. Noosthere. It's Eric Raymond. This is classic open source.
NOOSTA.
NOO sphere, like sphere of ideas, like NOO, like noose.
Oh, I learned something today.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the goal is to this is a pattern that I can recognize having gotten the PhD, which taught me, I guess, very little else of utility. But it's like there are certain communities where the like compensation is in the form of immortality by reproducing your ideas, and open source is like very much like that.
Yeah.
So people are indirectly compensated for mentoring you.
Yeah, in the form of immortality.
Damn, you just took it to like some like crazy ass level.
Yeah, you did.
I was to do like a 1-hour seminar on like because you showed me so much material on like the open source, like the economics of open source, the incentives of open source.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. Working in public is probably the best recent thing. But yeah.
I don't know if I can like share a screen or something, but
there's good stuff
like,
out there.
I would Like I would pay for that lecture. Like I will say.
Oh man,
Yeah.
$7,500.
That sounds really interesting.
That's the
Whatever it
rate.
is.
That's the rate I've heard.
Perfect. How?
No, I was saying this sounds really interesting. I would want to know more about whatever that is.
Oh yeah. Eric Raymond. It's like Richard Stallman has like kind of persevered as a public figure, and Eric Raymond was like more popular in the 90s and has kind of faded away, but big in enterprise Linux world and has a nice perspective from that.
Oh wow, that
thinking
exact
about it-
phrase that you said, the homesteading, is that
Yeah.
is from okay.
Yeah. Great lecture or letter writing, whatever.
So Eugene, I just realized this too. Like, I think another thing too is like most people who think of software like still think of it as a job, which is fine. Like, there's no like moral like level to
True.
that. Because I feel like the places I get mentorship are all places where like craft is the focus. Right? It's like in jujitsu and in pottery. It's just like the teacher sitting beside me and just watch. Like in jujitsu, like someone's like beating me up, and the teacher's like, "Post your left arm," like like try to get off like under him, right? Or like in pottery, it's very much like, oh, like my thing wobbled. The teacher can come and like help fix it. But like, I'll come in and like edit someone else's PR because I don't think there's an ownership of like, oh, like this is your PR, like you got to take it to completion. It's like, oh, like you went to bed because you're in China. Like I'm gonna go make some edits, show you, and then hopefully you can take it from there. I think the owning a feature, I think in itself, like deletes this idea of mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I think a lot about pull requests as I think so. Sometimes I send pull requests and
But that's not what you need for mentorship. You don't need somebody to like, wait until you've made a PR, then come in and make changes. Like that's better than nothing. Like it is a nice reward signal. But what you really want is something more like pottery, and specifically the scene from Ghost, where Patrick Swayze's hands go over and start showing her how to move the pottery. Like you want somebody there in your editor being like, here's how you should do this, like, like, oh yeah, move that over. Like you need that kind of very direct, very direct feedback, almost like keystroke by keystroke, all the way up. And that the immediacy of that feedback to be able to jump from like, hey, you're working on this, like, oh, this is the right way to manage these files, this is the right way to like use your editor, up to, wait, are we solving a business problem? Like you need like immediate feedback on that is, I think, the only solution for good.
Have you experienced anything like that? That level that you're describing? I have
outside of pair programming.
Yeah, pair programming in grad school with more senior grad students or postdocs. Yeah.
I think pair programming is the
right
one,
documentation.
only the one thing.
What happens to me when I refuse to write documentation?
Yeah, I think pull requests are the other main way, and I found it to be quite helpful, both for coding and both for getting mentorship.
Yeah. What I've been doing with Ivan is I'll just like on our one-on-ones, I'll just share we'll like share screen. I'll just refactor the code.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, hey, like I noticed that like here you have a function called like save table, but also makes an external request. So you're doing like two things here. So I'm gonna I wanna split it up for you. Right. But I'm not gonna like split it up and make sure the tests pass. I'm just gonna split it up. Right. This is the boundary. I'm gonna draw this line here. I'm gonna commit it. This code now does not run. Like you need to like retangle everything back and like, connect the dots. But it's like,
and coding is kind of like martial arts in a sense, because you have to pick your mentor very carefully. Like everyone has different styles.
Yes.
And like Jeremy Howard, for example, is like, forget Pep 8. Other people are like, you need to do, if you're not following Pep 8, then get out. Like this, I'm just giving you an extreme, but like you get and there's different sort of things, and you're like, you have to be conscious, like, okay, this is the kind of style I'm gonna learn today. I'm gonna learn like this style of coding, and then this style. I mean, like, and just kind of go with that.
You have to find a true practitioner of the Zen of Python,
Yeah, and even within the Zen of Python, there's like different like schools. And like some of those schools like battle with each other, like in the in a way.
Here's a question: who is your coding who are your coding mentors? Because I watch a lot of PyCon videos, so I have people in mind, but I'm curious what your folks are.
So I've done a lot of work with Jeremy Howard. That's one. But then I looked at David Beasley a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the only people I've had time for so far. I'm just being honest with you. I have the ability to go too much beyond those. Even those people are just enough to take up so much of your time if you get into
those 3-hour pandas videos.
Yeah, David Beasley is has a lot of stuff that you can get into. Yeah.
He's a beast. Yeah.
Such a beast.
I don't have anyone specific I follow. I just pop in the code bases, see code bases that I really appreciate. This library is amazing. How did they structure it? I try to pick up practices from there. Yeah.
Would you say that you're actually capable of generating new knowledge of how to write good Python, Eugene, or would you say that you just memorize the data that you see out in the world and then paste it?
More of the latter.
Yeah.
More of the latter. And I do have my
maybe you should be sued for copyright infringement for that kind of behavior.
Okay.
Just
I see where you're going. Yeah. No, I was gonna make a joke this is a very LLM question, but then you were already ahead of me.
Yeah, I was like, is this this is the Chinese programmer paradox.
I gotta run, but it was really nice to catch up with y'all.
Catch Charles. See you.
Yeah. But that's so funny. It had to, because I feel like I just learned to code by just refactoring 100,000 lines of Python code. It's every piece of taste I've developed is out of spite.
Wow.
I mean, I think for me, there's so many different flavors that when I encounter a flavor that is very different, that doesn't appeal to my taste, I actually have to find other people in my flavor to just check in and say oh my God, is this okay? This, and they're and I get a comfort by them saying oh my God, that's crazy. I'm like, okay.
Yes.
And I have to there's that tension of because it's so different. People have really different ideas about how to do things. It's wild.
Yeah, it's functional programming versus object versus just
Sometimes I read a library and let's say an internal library and I actually write, and it's just really jarring. I actually write my clear thoughts on this actually doesn't work. This actually doesn't map to how the developer thinks about it. You have everything in 20 different files. You need to change something. I write it all down. I actually review it with people, of course, who are way smarter than me, the principals, right? Hey, do you think of this? Do you agree with this feedback? Is it valid? And sometimes the response is that, hey, this was how it was done in the past because these were the constraints. And then I realized, oh, okay, this flavor is actually guided very much by the environment. But that process of learning and asking for feedback has been invaluable to me, and it's helped me learn my own style. My style is really more of the scrappy style, without too many. I'm not writing libraries. Yeah.
One thing I think interesting is that, in animation, no matter how good of an artist or a draftsman you are, when you work at an animation house, you have to draw the characters the same.
Yes.
Right. The people who are drawing Homer Simpson could be great painters, but when you come up to work, you fucking draw Homer Simpson that way. You don't change the style. And in animation in Japan, it's there are people who are known for more fluid movement or fight scenes or choreography or close-up shots. But it is still very much your job is to draw like everyone else, and you have to make things cohesive. And I feel in programming, there's none of that. It's so individualistic almost.
Aren't there style guides? Every team would have their own style guide, their own approach, their own tenets.
Right.
Yeah, I think different open source projects definitely have their own very distinct style, and it's actually can be very tempting to get so steeped in that style that you think that's the best style.
Yeah,
And it's like anything in life.
of course.
And it's like really hard to, and because you also invest a lot in the style if you get really deep into it or whatever. So like, yeah, I think it's like software has this thing. Like when you put something, like if you have a different style, you put it on Twitter, you'll get like a war will break out.
Oh, ouch.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I've seen this
flag of that
within
war.
I've seen this within teams, and then they had to try to consolidate their styles, write their own style guide, and yeah, I
And
actually
you
think
draft
that's a
well.
little bit too far, but yeah.
Yeah, it's also interesting because if you think about the example of like how mentorship happens in animation, it's like the highest skill. Like there's like 12 different grades of skill level, right? And like the first highest skill is the one that organizes all the keyframes. Right, so that's almost like the function definitions and like the sequencing of functions across this infrastructure. And then you go back down to the lower levels, people who are just like drafting like intermediate animations. And then once those are done, like lead animators of the next level will actually go back and draw over the existing illustrations. So you first have maybe like just the frame. That's like 35 different scenes for a 20-minute video. And then for each scene, you have like the drafts people, then you get redrawn over and drawn over and drawn over until you get back to the original animation.
Animation is so
like
brutal.
One person drafts the entire scene, right? There's like 10 people touch a 40-second clip.
That sounds so similar to a high-level design doc, broken down to low-level component docs, and then broken down to implementation.
But that happens at like Amazon, but it doesn't happen at like,
Does it not?
Like in a small company. I don't think so. Like,
no, I've never worked off a design doc. I actually don't even work off OKRs. I'm like, you write the OKR and then immediately just ignore the hell out of it. Be like, just do whatever you think is best. It's best there. Fine. Because like, not gonna just, what's the point? Like, either, I don't know. It just doesn't fit my personality, I guess. Like,
yeah, I don't do OKRs either, but I have a charter where I write my charter for the year. And of course I align it very tightly with my leaders. This is not really Amazon thing. It's like when essentially I can do whatever I want as long as it's sort of within the charter. So as long as I align the charter up front, okay, I'm going to solve these problems, these big problems. How I do it on what timeline, it's up to me. So it's a lot more room for flexibility. There's a question from Evan, which is, okay, so I guess the question is, how have you thought about coaching, simplification in general? I think the answer is I don't have an answer to this. How I think about it is I think people get to learn this via design doc reviews or pull request reviews, right? It's like, okay, here's the design doc, here's a machine learning model I'm gonna try to use to solve this problem. If it's way too complex, you need to have someone who can actually tell you, hey, this is way too complex, man. Can you come up with a baseline? Or in your code, like, okay, I'm gonna build this amazing abstract class that can fit all future models that I'm doing. It's like, no, I mean, right now you just need to solve this one problem for this model. If the same problem comes up again, then we abstract it instead of trying to solve everything. I think that after you go through a few steps of that, I think that may get baked in, but I've seen some people be very resistant to that.
No,
and
all the code you write is over-engineered, and all the code I write accounts for possibilities of the future. Like it's actually all time. Again, I think it all just comes from like insecurity. Like there's what else?
I think you're right. You have that point whereby people are saying, "Oh no, I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking big. I have a vision. This is my vision."
Because I'm so smart.
And then there's this tension as well, right? And I guess I think the tension is good, but I see way more often than not, scientists in general tend to lean towards complexity, and software engineers tend to lean towards simplification and robustness, which I really enjoy, right? So I'm trying to.
You think so?
I thought. Wait, what's the last thing you said? Who is simple and who's complex?
Scientists tend to lean towards complexity, and software engineers tend to lean towards simplification. At least some of the at least the software engineers I work with, they lean towards
Can
simplification.
I say a shit post?
Yeah.
I think the scientists are complex because their shit just like their code just sucks. Like it's complex. They like can't do it.
It could be. It could be. So
The
that's the thing.
engineers are complex because they want it to be smart. You know what I mean? It's like,
Okay.
oh, like
Fair point.
the engineers, like we have all these like abstract base classes that we inherit from, and now we have like this, model factory, and we're gonna actually this is gonna be a serverless Lambda here, and we're gonna have like a queuing system. And I was like, you have
I don't
4
know.
users.
There's like one, like I can tell you like a very tactical thing. Like there's this phrase Yagni. You're not gonna need
Yes,
it.
I love that.
Just
Exactly.
when you're coding, you just repeat that over and over again. You just keep
I-
saying that shit, and then like that, it's called you ain't gonna need it. It's like
I mean,
anytime you think like, oh, let me add this like hook here, let me add this like, let me expand the function signature to like whatever. Just keep saying you're not gonna need it. Like
I
this
ask
later.
a variant of this question, right? I say it to people all the time, they don't get it. I say, will you use this in the next 3 months? Right? Fairly long enough. Like if not, like why bother if you're not going to use it in the next 3 months? It's like, oh, I'm going to plan ahead 1 or 2 years when I don't know.
Yeah.
It has to be repeated over and over again. Like I remember working.
The question is
like,
why do we have to repeat it over and over
I
again?
remember working with Jeremy, and he like I was like, hey, do you think we should? He would just respond Yagni, and be like, okay, bye. Be like respond like maybe like a day later something Yagni. Everything is Yagni. Okay, that's so. Again, this is the style. That's like a style thing. That's like a very specific. It's like martial arts. Like you're going into a dojo, very
Like
specific.
only do the basics, no flashy moves, right? Like,
Yeah, like this is like a specific style of attacking.
Yeah. Like my gym is like no spinning shit. Like don't like no spinning shit. Squeeze them until they die. Like
Yeah.
There's like other schools like we're gonna like front somersault over them, and then they're gonna like get. So
and maybe like real martial or maybe like martial arts, it is beneficial to learn different styles and then blend them or something. Like that's where cool stuff might happen. I don't know.
But what
Honestly,
you
don't have
find
that
though
much
is
time.
at the highest level, it is only the fundamentals that matter.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the basics are simple, but they are not easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And I think a lot of these systems like that, like for an instructor, like I need like 40 DMs before I add a feature to the library.
Wow.
It's like I need like people are like, oh, Jason, like when it's happening, I put it like a notch on my Apple Notes. Like 14 people have asked me for anthropic function calling. Okay, I will build anthropic function calling when someone is like gonna lose money if I don't have it. Right. That's like my deciding factor because before that, it's like my patch file used to be just like 800 lines of like Python code and documentation. I like just started factoring things out. Right. They're like, if there's like async code and sync code, like, I'm gonna copy paste it twice and add an await in the second copy. Right. And I think it's also about like when you build like I have this like essay on like when you build a temple, you have to like choose the wood wisely. Right. And there are like the pillars that like hold up the temple, and those are like really important. You have to think really hard about that because those will last for the next 70 years. But you have to like also constantly choose to find the shit wood and turn it into like the shingles. Because when it comes to like rebuild this house, like that's just going to be firewood, and you have to like commit and knowing that it's going to be firewood, and it's going to be deleted, right? And I think sometimes people try to like pick the nice wood to make firewood too, and now you're just like spending way too much time on this system, or it's like you were too careless with the load bearing structures, right? So now your core abstractions suck, and you spent way too much time like trying to figure out the details of like the docstring of this decorator, and it's like,
why does that happen?
Why?
Is it poor judgment?
I think people are not used to. Okay, so how do you learn to rebuild a temple? You have to build it and wait 70 years and go shit like there's so many trees that we can plant.
So like along these lines, like one like surprising thing that I learned from people is like just deleting all of the code and just starting from scratch over and over again. I was like, wow. Because like in companies, people are very emotionally attached to their code. Like they don't want to throw it away. They don't want to delete it. In fact, if you do a pull request that changes the code, someone might get mad at you. Those type of things. Right?
Really?
I mean, you know,
Wow.
I'm not saying, but there are like people have emotional attachments, like in a sense. Like if you just come start changing code, but like I don't know, that's something that it's hard to do. You're like, why you invested so much time? Why are you gonna just rewrite it from scratch? There's something there. I think in some cases, uh, yeah, you just need to start fresh. Like
If you want to call
you
that
have
out,
an
which is like,
idea.
the point isn't to rewrite everything. The point is that when you rebuild the temple, like the big pillars that use these like 200-year-old trees, like you're not supposed to recycle that, but you are supposed to recycle the shingles. And when when people are writing code, they're kind of like treating all code as equal, right? Like, you know, if I think of instructor, for example, the like response model keyword is like a pillar, like that's not going to change, right? Like the fact that the response model class is exactly matches the return type of the create function, like that's a pillar.
Yes.
But like how I handle the construction of the keyword arguments in the JSON, like that can change next year. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like today it's like a bunch of if statements. Next, maybe I have like a factory or whatever. Like there are things that will be deleted and it doesn't matter. And there's these things that have to stay like in the front. And I think a lot of bad abstractions are where the code at the front of your abstractions are kind of shitty. And if like that is done poorly, things down the line work really terribly. Like someone was like, hey, like how come responsible can't take like an array of pydantic models? Right? Like why can't it be like a tuple? And it's like, well, tuples aren't a type hint. Like if you break this now, people are not going to know like what happens, right? Because like if you want a tuple, do you want me to pick one of many, or do you want multiple of each individual one? But if you say iterable of union of type A and B, you know exactly what you're getting at. We have to be very strict on like not breaking that abstraction. Whereas like JSON mode, markdown JSON mode, like who cares, right?
Yep.
I think that's another big issue. Is like people have not written code and watched it age poorly to figure out what should be deleted and what should stay, because you just leave your company in 2 years.
So I think one way to really learn is to see how your system deprecates, or see like the judgments that the decisions that you've made, what worked well and what didn't work well. And Jason has had like 6 years of experience in Stitch Fix and now instructor. That's why you've seen that. How can we do that without the person actually going through that example? Is it like sharing lessons or sharing things
Culture
that go?
change. Culture change. It's like you have to sit from someone like that's respected, people look up to, whatever. Just you have to like deeply say, hey, like we value simplicity. Don't add you know. Basically, it's the same thing, right? It's like whoever, like your boss's boss, or whoever needs to be in every Slack channel just saying Yagni all the time. Like I'm just simplifying it, but it's
I'm
like
gonna
the
create a
same
Yagni
energy.
bot.
Yeah,
Yagni
it's just
bot.
the same energy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and kind of that kind of thing. Like it just comes from a culture. You were like, oh, okay, it is acceptable. It is good to be simple. Like it's like a principle.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think also that just makes things so much faster too.
I
Like
agree.
I don't know, man. Like
Yeah.
not everyone's writing code for like the 747. Like we're like at Stitch, we're like selling pants. Just like work a little bit faster. If it breaks, we'll like fix it.
Yeah, I think also what Charles mentioned, which is that some people just want to do whatever they want in a job, and sometimes it doesn't really matter whether it helps customers or not, or helps the business.
And
I
say this too. Go on.
oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so like early, like when you're early developer, you read code and you're like, I don't understand anything. I must be dumb. After at this point, if you read code, you don't understand what's going on. We know that it's not you, it's them. Because
Yeah,
I mean, not because we're arrogant, but because like
you have experience.
you have some experience and like, hey, they have some responsibilities to onboard people that they're not fulfilling, and you have like some reasonable expectation that like like you shouldn't have to be a genius to understand the code. Like that's not the bar. So like I think that means a lot. I think that kind of gets lost. People just be like, fuck it, just write tons of spaghetti code and we're done.
Yeah, one practice I actually try to do is I actually have the junior developers as a pull request reviewer. And then sometimes it's like, shit, Eugene, why did I miss a review for this PR? I know nothing to contribute. No, your job is to learn the code. And if something looks amiss to you, your job is to comment. And that's how I actually don't know if it's helpful for them. My intent is really just to get them to learn. But
get them to write the documentation for the code.
Yeah, I make them with the doc strings. Because what I do is I say, like, I don't want you to review the code. I need you to open it in your IDE and like touch it. Like I need you to like command click a bunch of functions and figure out where everything's going. Like that's what you need. You can't like look at the code.
Just look at it.
Explain it from a beginner's perspective.
Yeah.
Like which you are, if you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's like better documentation than the one you're gonna write.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing I've seen is that I actually don't know about the code that you write, but one thing I've seen with code is that when we do pull requests, a lot of the comments are like syntax error, dot string spelling thing. But very few people actually really think very hard about the methodology. Oh no, you try to join this here. Or, like have you thought about zero error rates, division by zero? Because people don't naturally think about those. At least I don't know, maybe software engineers don't naturally think about all the data structures and joining it. Can you coach that? Or is that just normal or is that not normal? Like
no, I mean, like most people don't give detailed, like super good code reviews. I've only experienced in open source for some reason. I won't
only in open source. Okay.
Yeah, personally, because I don't know why. I can have some theories why that is. I mean, I think in jobs you kind of sadly sort of like judged by like lines of code committed. Whether or not people want to admit it or not, they kind of sort of are. I mean, like just it's true. Like they're not. I mean, it's not like a metric, but it's like pull request reviewing is not a thing people. It's like viewed as glue work, right? It's like more like culturally speaking. If you are the person writing the code, you're gonna get way more credit than the person reviewing the code. Like in a lot of organizations. And so like I just think it's just it's like a incentives thing also.
That's pretty unusual. I think what we try to incentivize is we have a co-pilot and a pilot. The pilot's the one writing the code and the co-pilot's reviewing it. Usually the co-pilot is the more senior person. Because only the more it's like you need a stronger model to check the weaker model, right? It's usually the reviewer is the more senior one. And actually we count it as it's intangible benefit, but it's a strong benefit.
Like I used to give really aggressive code reviews because I would never review code like on GitHub. I would like pull the branch in and like jump around and like you're like, like this doesn't feel right. Like when you look at like red lines and green lines and you see like 4 edits, you're like, okay, like characters changed. And then when you like actually open up the code, you're like why are these like abstractions so far away from each other? Like why naming feels so weird? Like how come like these two functions are only using each other but like 17 directories away? Like what the fuck is going on? And then you like leave these comments and then you realize you're like kind of losing your social credit.
Yeah, you can't go overboard.
That's like blocking the merge on like I see. You're like whereas open source is just like there's more consumers, right? Like if you merge in bad code in open source, like you're breaking like 10,000 people's code. If you like merge in bad code, you're just kind of annoying 3 people. And 3 people is a tragedy, and 100,000 is a statistic. But like,
look, there is a large endorphin rush you get when you merge your pull request is merged.
It's like all approved, ship it.
Yeah, it's like I've been accepted. So like you want to balance that incentive, like. You have like a reinforcement, like you have some signal that you're sending into the ether, like please commit code. And by like making the pull request process like too arduous, you're like saying just don't write code. Just write code somewhere else, please. Like in a way. So you kind of have to somehow.
That's a balance, right? You don't want all your comments to just be nits, but it has to be like a tangible impact.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen this from a handful of commenters, and I always ask them, hey man, I mean, I'm super glad that let's say they commented on someone's code. You really thought through the data structures, you really thought through the join, and you really pointed out a critical flaw. I mean, how did you do it? It's like, oh no, they actually just took the time and really loaded everything into their head, and they were able to point that out. But not that many people do that. Is it because it's just too tiring? Should we have dedicated time slots for pull requests, or it's just
I think so.
no point trying to solve it?
It takes
when you
just
look
as
at
much time. It takes more time to review a pull request than
Yes, it
to
does.
answer the write the code yourself.
It
Maybe like
does.
a lot longer, actually.
Yeah, it's like in like kitchens, there's this idea of like house cleaning, or like every once in a while you just like yell like house cleaning. And your job is like you put everyone puts everything down, and for like 2 minutes you, like
Mm,
wipe the counter.
mm.
You know, like for like a minute there was like a onion skin like on the ground. You just like pick it up, throw it out. Because if you don't do these like tiny like 2-minute like interventions across your day, you end up with like a bigger mess, right? It's like how long does it take to like eat a meal and like cook it than to clean the dishes and like wipe the counters, right? If your kitchen's a fucking mess, it gets worse and worse and worse over time. Like,
Yep.
that's one thing. And again, I just feel like too many people think they own the pull request, and it's like, dude, we work at the same company. It's 2 people. Why don't you just edit the code? Like, because like I'm asleep. If you just edit the code, I'll wake up and I'll continue working on it. But then you say like there's a typo here, and like, okay, like instead of fixing a 1-character typo, you left a 5-word response, and you didn't even
I
leave
see.
it as a code suggestion.
Yeah, like pull requests are optional. Like you should open a pull request because you want someone to look at it, not because it's like a gate. In this situation that Jason is talking about, like when this is like a smaller, close knit, group of developers.
Open source pull requests are like even weird, and I feel like people just like want credits, which is fine.
They want to be like contributor or something. I don't know.
That's fine.
That's the only thing you have, like to show for anything, right? I've done so many resumes of like I made a pull request to PyTorch. I have a
No,
pull
you
request.
serious?
Yeah, in the margin, it's like I have had a pull request accepted to TensorFlow, pull request like merged to PyTorch, whatever. And okay, people.
I have a pull request to LangChain and Django.
Yeah, there you go.
I throw in the README.
I fixed the doc. Documentation.
Yeah, my blog has 26 contributors because my spelling is shit. Okay, I need to go because it's been like 2 hours now.
It's 2 hours. Like, wow.
No, you guys are on the East Coast. It's like 6:30. I want to go get some steaks.
This was fun.
Yeah. Okay, let's go end the stream first, and then we don't have to jump off. But take care, guys. End the stream.